So when you stop texting and calling, what you are really doing is giving a man the space he needs to grow. You are not rejecting him, but giving him the opportunity to rise to his full potential. You are teaching him the value of purpose, respect, and responsibility. And ultimately, you are helping him to become the leader he was designed to be. In the end, relationships are not about constant communication, but about meaningful connection. Step back and watch him react, not in desperation, but in growth, responsibility, and transformation. When you stop texting and calling, a man will react by becoming the best version of himself. Thank you, Dot. When you stop constantly texting and calling, a man begins to realize the true value of your time and attention. In a world where communication is often instant and plentiful, it's easy for people to take each other for granted. The constant flow of messages, notifications, and calls can create a false sense of connection, where people expect instant responses without truly valuing the time and energy behind them. However, when you step back from this constant communication, it serves as a wake-up call. It forces him to recognize that the most meaningful interactions are not those that happen continuously, but those that happen when there is intention, when every word spoken or message sent carries purpose. The absence of unnecessary interaction compels him to evaluate the relationship more deeply. No longer can he rely on the convenience of a quick message or a late-night call to maintain the connection. He is faced with the reality that relationships, particularly those that are meaningful and worth sustaining, are not built on fleeting conversations, but on moments of genuine connection. Without the noise of constant communication, he is forced to confront what truly matters: the quality of the time you spend together, the depth of the conversations you share, and the emotional energy that goes into nurturing a bond. When you stop texting and calling, you are teaching him that presence is not just physical, but emotional and intellectual as well. It is easy to overlook the true value of someone's presence when it is always available. But when that presence is no longer guaranteed, it becomes something to be treasured, something that is earned through effort, attention, and genuine connection. A man will begin to understand that your presence in his life is not a given. It is a gift, something that he must appreciate and cherish, not something that should be expected on demand. The value of your presence is only truly recognized when it is no longer taken for granted. When you are constantly there, he may begin to assume that your availability is infinite. However, when you stop reaching out, it challenges him to see beyond the surface level of the relationship and understand the deeper layers of what it means to have you in his life. He will come to realize that presence is not just about being physically present, but about being emotionally attuned, mentally engaged, and spiritually connected. And it is in this realization that the true worth of your presence becomes apparent. Not as a fleeting moment, but as a precious gift that must be nurtured and protected. A man who is constantly pursued may never have the opportunity to reflect on his own purpose, his direction, or his role in life. Relationships, by their very nature, are a dance between two individuals, but sometimes one person leads while the other follows. When a woman is constantly initiating contact, texting, and calling, it can create an imbalance where the man doesn't have to think about his own role. There is no space for him to evaluate where he stands, what he desires, and how he fits into the bigger picture. It can become easy for him to fall into a passive role, allowing the flow of the relationship to be directed by the efforts and actions of the other person. However, when you step back, when you stop constantly texting or calling, it opens up a crucial space for him to reflect. This space, though often uncomfortable at first, is essential for his personal growth and understanding. It allows him to ask himself the deeper questions that should be asked of any man who is committed to leading a purposeful life. Questions such as, who am I? What are my values? What is my mission in life? Where am I going? And what do I hope to accomplish? These questions are the foundation of his self-awareness. Without being constantly guided by external influences, he must rely on his own internal compass to navigate his life and his choices. In this moment of reflection, he starts to clarify his sense of purpose. Purpose is not just about what one does in the world, but also about understanding why he does it and what he hopes to achieve in the future. By stepping back and giving him space to answer these questions, you allow him to reclaim his autonomy, his identity, and his personal vision. He begins to think about how his actions align with his values and where he wants to direct his energy. This deep self-reflection isn't just about the relationship, it's about his life as a whole. It forces him to think about how he contributes to the world around him and how he can align his actions with his purpose. Furthermore, this space of reflection encourages him to think critically about his role in the relationship. Often, men can become complacent when the dynamics of a relationship are dictated by the other person's efforts. However, when that dynamic shifts, it prompts him to examine his own contributions. What does he bring to the relationship? What are his responsibilities? And what kind of partner does he want to be? This self-reflection leads him to a greater understanding of what he wants from the relationship, how he can contribute meaningfully, and how he can show up as the best version of himself. Through this process, he comes closer to understanding the purpose of the relationship itself. Relationships are not just about emotional fulfillment or companionship, but also about growth, partnership, and mutual respect. As he reflects on his life, his goals, and his relationship, he begins to see the connection between his personal growth and the growth of the relationship. This deeper understanding leads him to act with more intention and commitment, knowing that his actions have significance not just for him, but for the future he envisions. In this moment of reflection, the relationship transitions from being an automatic connection to something that is intentional and purposeful. He will recognize that he is not just in a relationship by chance, but by choice. This reflection encourages him to take ownership of his future and the direction in which the relationship is headed, leading to a more mature, purposeful approach to life and love. Often, a man's pursuit is clouded by the comfort of consistent communication. When a woman is always there, reaching out, checking in, and initiating the connection, it can create a false sense of security and stability. There's little need for him to actively engage in the pursuit because the effort seems almost automatic. In this environment, the pursuit becomes more about convenience than about genuine desire. The act of pursuit itself is diluted, and the energy required to keep the connection alive is taken for granted. He becomes accustomed to the idea that things will happen without him having to put in the effort, and this softens his drive to chase after what is truly valuable. However, when you stop calling and texting, it shifts the dynamic. It awakens something deep within him, a realization that if he truly wants to continue the connection, he must take the initiative. The absence of constant communication forces him to step up, and in doing so, it ignites a clearer, more purposeful desire to pursue. This is not a pursuit driven by routine, obligation, or convenience, but by something much deeper, a recognition of what truly matters. In the absence of constant contact, he must now focus on what he truly values about you and the relationship. No longer can he rely on the ease of text messages or calls to maintain the connection. The effort must now come from within. A man is inherently designed to pursue, to seek out what he desires, and to make conscious efforts to win what he values. When the constant availability is no longer there, it brings his pursuit into sharper focus. He is forced to assess his intentions, not just passively wait for things to unfold. His desire to pursue is no longer automatic. It becomes intentional, purposeful, and driven by a deeper understanding of what he stands to lose if he does not act. This clarity helps him to recognize the value of what he has, the significance of the relationship, and the role he must play in his growth. In this space of reflection and awakening, his pursuit becomes a reflection of his true desires, not merely out of convenience or habit. He will seek you not because it is easy, but because it is meaningful. The clarity in his pursuit comes from an understanding that relationships thrive on mutual effort and intention. He now sees the importance of earning your attention, respect, and love not simply because it is readily available, but because it is something that must be nurtured, respected, and fought for. This shift in dynamic allows him to move beyond passive participation in the relationship. The clarity he gains is not just about the desire to connect with you, but about the kind of relationship he wants to build. He begins to see the value in truly understanding the depths of the relationship, in contributing to its growth, and in making decisions that reflect his commitment. The pursuit becomes less about fulfilling immediate emotional needs and more about creating something lasting, something that is not driven by automatic responses, but by a shared vision and mutual effort. Ultimately, the space you create by stepping back from constant communication allows him to pursue with intention and purpose, creating a foundation for a stronger, more meaningful connection built on genuine desire and conscious effort. In the absence of constant communication, a man is forced to cultivate his character. When he is no longer constantly receiving messages or calls that affirm his worth or give him direction, he is placed in a position where he must rely on himself. For many, especially in a relationship, there is a comfort in being regularly checked on, affirmed, or reminded of one's value. But when that external validation is no longer readily available, it compels a person to look inward, to find strength, purpose, and confidence from within. Without the constant flow of texts or calls, a man has to confront his own thoughts, his own feelings, and his own intentions. He no longer has the reassurance of an ongoing conversation that directs his actions or confirms his place in the relationship. In this absence, his character is tested in ways that constant communication may prevent. It is in the quiet moments, the spaces of uncertainty, that a man truly begins to grow. His strength is tested because he must now face challenges without the immediate relief of a conversation or an emotional check-in. His ability to endure and stay focused on what matters is put to the test. The absence of consistent interaction forces him to develop his internal fortitude, to become resilient in the face of silence, and to confront the truth of who he is without distractions. Similarly, his patience will be tested. Relationships, like life itself, require patience. When communication is constant, there's an automatic flow, things move quickly, and emotions are shared immediately. But in the absence of that constant exchange, a man must learn to wait. He must learn to be patient, not just in waiting for a response, but in understanding that some things take time to develop. He is given the space to reflect on his actions, to plan his next steps, and to understand that true connection cannot be rushed. Patience becomes a cornerstone of his character as he learns to navigate the natural ebb and flow of the relationship without relying on quick fixes or instant gratification. Integrity too will be tested. Integrity is not something that can be cultivated through external pressure or the need to conform to expectations. It is something that must come from within, something that holds steady even when no one is watching, without constant reminders through text messages or calls. A man is challenged to act in alignment with his values, whether anyone notices or not. He is faced with the challenge of standing firm in who he is, even when there is no immediate feedback from the outside world. This is when a man's true character emerges, when he is no longer seeking validation or affirmation, but acting out of a sense of internal conviction and responsibility. True growth comes when we are forced to stand on our own. It is easy to rely on the comfort of constant communication, where reassurance is just a text away. But when that comfort is removed, it pushes a man to develop self-sufficiency in his emotions, his actions, and his decisions. He must learn to be the captain of his own ship, navigating his journey with purpose, clarity, and resolve. It is in this space of solitude and reflection that a man is given the opportunity to shape himself into a stronger individual, not just for himself, but for those around him. Whether as a partner, friend, or leader, this process of cultivating character will shape him into someone who is dependable, strong, and grounded in his values. His decisions are no longer based on external validation, but on his own sense of what is right, what is important, and what he stands for. His character becomes a reflection of his internal growth, and this growth will spill over into every aspect of his life, enriching his relationships and the way he interacts with the world. When you stop reaching out to him, a man is placed in a position where he must take responsibility for the relationship. In many relationships, there can be an unspoken dynamic where one person, often without realizing it, becomes the initiator, the one who reaches out, sets the tone, and ensures the connection remains alive. This might feel natural at first, and it can even create a sense of security for both individuals. But what happens when that dynamic changes? When the messages stop, when the calls are no longer being made, the person who has been receiving this constant initiative must now face the responsibility of maintaining the relationship. The absence of your effort places the burden on him to decide whether or not the relationship is truly important to him. In this space, he cannot hide behind the comfort of routine communication. He cannot simply rely on the fact that you will always be there, sending texts or making calls. He is faced with the reality that if he wants the relationship to continue, he must be the one to take action. This situation forces him to step out, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to maintain and nurture the connection. The absence of your initiative requires him to assess what the relationship means to him. It prompts him to evaluate whether he is willing to invest in it, to put in the necessary work to keep it alive, and to communicate in a way that shows his genuine commitment. Taking responsibility in this context is not just about responding to messages or making calls. It's about owning his role in the relationship. It's about acknowledging his actions, his words, and his behavior, and how they impact the dynamic between the two of you. Without constant prompting, he is now forced to confront his own role in the relationship and recognize that maintaining it is a shared responsibility. He must ask himself important questions. What am I doing to contribute to this relationship? What actions am I taking to make sure it thrives? Am I putting in enough effort, or am I relying too much on the other person to do the heavy lifting? In this space, he also faces the opportunity to be honest with himself. Sometimes people get caught up in the flow of relationships without truly considering whether they are living up to their responsibilities. The absence of your initiative forces him to confront any complacency or negligence that may have existed. If he truly values the relationship, this realization will encourage him to take responsibility for his actions, whether that's reaching out, offering support, or simply being present in a more consistent way. It's no longer about waiting for you to make the first move. It's about him actively participating in the relationship in a meaningful and intentional manner. This shift also provides him with a chance to lead the relationship with more clarity and maturity. True leadership in relationships involves being willing to step up when needed, to take accountability for one's actions, and to be present even when it requires effort. It's about recognizing that relationships are a partnership and both individuals must carry the weight of the connection. If he doesn't take responsibility, the relationship may falter as it requires both people to engage in it fully. The absence of your initiative acts as a catalyst for him to reflect on what he values, and if the relationship is truly meaningful to him, he will rise to meet that responsibility. By stepping back, you allow him the opportunity to see where he stands, what he truly values, and how much he is willing to invest in the relationship. Taking responsibility for his actions becomes a powerful way for him to demonstrate his commitment, and it pushes him to grow and mature, not just as a partner, but as an individual. He must choose whether to engage fully and proactively or let the relationship slip away. The decision is now in his hands, and the absence of your initiative forces him to confront it head on. Respect is the cornerstone of any successful relationship. It is the foundation upon which trust, understanding, and genuine connection are built. When you stop constantly texting and calling, you are not just creating space in the relationship, you are establishing a powerful boundary, one that speaks volumes without saying a word. This boundary is not just a simple act of restraint. It is a clear message that your time, your energy, and your attention are precious. It is a non-verbal way of communicating that you value yourself and that your presence is not something to be taken for granted. By stepping back from the constant communication, you are teaching him the importance of boundaries. In relationships, it is easy for people to fall into patterns where one person becomes the primary initiator of contact. Over time, this can lead to an imbalance where the effort is not shared equally and the relationship may begin to feel one-sided. When you stop reaching out, you are asserting that mutual respect requires effort from both sides. It is a call for balance for both partners to recognize that respect is not something that can be assumed, but something that must be actively cultivated. A man who respects you will take this boundary seriously. Instead of feeling neglected or abandoned, he will begin to appreciate the space you've created. This space is not an absence of care, but a powerful reminder that respect is earned, not expected. He will realize that your time and attention are not automatic privileges, but gifts that must be cherished and honored. When you set this boundary, you are allowing him to reflect on his actions, to reconsider how he engages with you, and to think more deeply about what it means to truly respect someone. Respect is not something that can be demanded or manipulated. It must be willingly given, and it must come from a place of genuine understanding. The absence of constant communication will force him to reconsider his approach to the relationship. He will recognize that respect is not about convenience. It's not about being there when it is easy or when it suits him. True respect requires consistency, awareness, and effort, even when things are not immediately convenient. When you step back, you are demonstrating that respect is something that should be upheld at all times, not just when it's comfortable. This will challenge him to rise to meet your standards, not because you asked him to, but because he genuinely understands the importance of treating you with the dignity you deserve. Moreover, this boundary pushes him to look at the relationship with a clearer perspective. Respect is not a passive trait, it is an active choice that one must make every day. It's not something that can be given out of obligation or convenience. It must come from a place of genuine acknowledgement of the other person's value. When he steps back and begins to reflect, he will realize that your boundaries, your space, and your time are not barriers, but affirmations of your worth. He will see that your value is not something that can be taken for granted or expected to be readily available. Rather, it is something to be honored and respected. In this space of reflection and change, the role of respect becomes clearer. He will understand that respect is not just about how he treats you in the moment, but how he values your presence and your needs in the long term. This realization will compel him to adjust his actions and mindset to better align with the respect that you have set forth. The boundary you create through your absence from constant communication is not just a call for distance, it's a call for deeper understanding, for mutual respect that can only come when both partners are committed to honoring each other's needs, time, and value in the relationship. Relationships are built on the principle of give and take. They are a dynamic exchange where both partners contribute in different ways to create a balanced, nurturing connection. However, when one party is always initiating contact, always reaching out, always making the effort to sustain the communication, it creates an imbalance. One person is constantly giving, while the other is passively receiving. Over time, this can lead to frustration, emotional depletion, and a sense of unfairness as the relationship begins to feel one-sided. The constant initiation may feel like a gesture of care, but it inadvertently creates an environment where one person is carrying the weight of maintaining the relationship, while the other is not called upon to actively contribute. When you stop constantly texting, calling, or initiating the contact, you are not withdrawing your care or affection, but rather creating the space for him to step forward. This shift gives him the opportunity to reciprocate not just in words, but in actions. He will now be faced with the responsibility of taking initiative, of reaching out to you, and of investing in the relationship in a meaningful way. The absence of your constant communication allows him to reflect on the imbalance and recognize that relationships are not about one person continually giving, but about both people engaging in a mutual exchange of care, attention, and effort. This shift is not about playing games or creating distance for the sake of manipulation. It's about restoring balance and fostering a more equal partnership. Reciprocity is fundamental to the health of any relationship. When one person is always the giver, the relationship becomes unsustainable. The person who is always receiving may begin to take the other's efforts for granted, not realizing that it is the consistent giving that keeps the connection alive. In this situation, the person who is always initiating might begin to feel undervalued, or worse, feel that their efforts are not being appreciated. By stepping back, you offer him a chance to truly value what you bring to the relationship. You create a space where he must recognize that relationships are not just about receiving love, attention, or affection, but also about giving, caring, and contributing. As he steps into this role of reciprocation, he will begin to understand the power of mutual effort. He will realize that his participation in the relationship is not just a passive act, but an active choice that shapes the dynamic. Relationships thrive on balance. It is not enough for one person to carry the emotional weight while the other only enjoys the benefits. When both partners are equally invested in giving and receiving, the relationship becomes stronger, more fulfilling, and more lasting. This recognition of reciprocity does not just help balance the relationship, but helps him to grow as an individual. He will start to understand that the health of the connection depends on both people contributing equally, and that love and care cannot exist in an atmosphere of imbalance. This shift will allow him to step into the reality of mutual responsibility in the relationship. It will encourage him to take the initiative, to offer his time and energy, and to engage with the relationship not just when it is convenient, but because it matters to him. By realizing the importance of reciprocity, he will become more conscious of his role in sustaining the connection and begin to understand that love is not something that can be taken for granted. The relationship will shift from being an automatic exchange of communication to a deeper, more intentional partnership where both individuals are working together to create a lasting bond. Through this process, he will gain a clearer understanding of the value of reciprocity. It is in giving that he will truly appreciate what he receives, and in receiving, he will recognize the importance of offering something in return. By stepping back, you are giving him the chance to understand that healthy relationships are about balance, about both partners equally contributing to the connection. This understanding will not only strengthen the relationship, but will also help him develop a deeper respect for the effort it takes to maintain a meaningful reciprocal partnership. Finally, by stepping back and giving him space, you allow him to evolve into the leader he was meant to be. Leadership is a quality that is often misunderstood. It is not about control, dominance, or exerting authority over others. True leadership is about growth, responsibility, vision, and purpose. It is about stepping up when needed, making decisions that are best for the collective, and guiding others toward a shared goal. Every man is designed with an innate capacity to lead, but sometimes that capacity is never fully realized because he is not given the space to grow into it. When you step back from constantly initiating contact, you create an environment where he is given the opportunity to take charge, to show up, and to rise to the occasion. Leadership begins with the willingness to take responsibility for one's actions and choices. When you no longer take the lead in communication, he is placed in a position where he must decide how to move forward. This is a critical moment for him. It forces him to step into his own power and make decisions that reflect his values and his commitment to the relationship. In the absence of your constant initiative, he has no choice but to become more proactive, to assess what he wants, and to take responsibility for creating the future of the relationship. This is when leadership is forged, not out of necessity, but out of a true understanding of his role. A man's ability to lead is often tied to his sense of responsibility. Leadership is not a title, it's an action. It is the ability to take initiative and make decisions that are not just in his best interest, but in the best interest of the relationship as a whole. When you step back, you give him the opportunity to step forward. It forces him to own the relationship, to actively engage in it, and to take responsibility for the direction it is heading. In doing so, he begins to recognize his own strengths, capabilities, and leadership potential. He will start to understand that leadership is not about controlling or dominating, but about inspiring, guiding, and making choices that align with the greater purpose of the partnership. By allowing him the space to lead, you create a dynamic where he becomes more than just a passive participant in the relationship. He begins to take ownership of the relationship's growth and development. He will rise to the occasion, motivated by the opportunity to make decisions, to set goals, and to create a vision for the future. In this process, he evolves into the man he was always meant to be, someone who can confidently lead, not only in the relationship, but in other areas of his life as well. The absence of constant communication compels him to take responsibility for his actions, and through this responsibility, he begins to see himself not just as a partner, but as a leader within the relationship. This transformation is not just personal, it also transforms the relationship itself. As he steps into his leadership role, the relationship shifts from one of passive engagement to active participation. He becomes more invested in the relationship's future, more thoughtful in his actions, and more deliberate in the way he nurtures the bond between the two of you. A man who steps into leadership does so with purpose. He understands that his actions now have the power to shape the trajectory of the relationship. This transformation creates a foundation for mutual respect, as both partners understand the roles they play and the importance of contributing to the relationship's growth and success. The evolution into leadership is not immediate. It takes time, effort, and space to fully manifest. By giving him the room to grow, you are allowing him to evolve into the leader he was always meant to be. The more he steps into this role, the more he will begin to understand the significance of his actions, decisions, and the way he interacts with you. This process doesn't just help him become a better leader in the relationship, it also helps him grow as an individual, a partner, and a man. The leadership he develops will carry over into all areas of his life, and it will only strengthen the bond between the two of you. When you give him the space to lead, you are not stepping back from the relationship, you are empowering him to rise to his true potential. In doing so, you both become stronger, and the relationship itself becomes a reflection of two individuals who are growing together, each contributing their unique strengths to create a balanced, purposeful, and deeply fulfilling partnership.